Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Annie, this is Stanley, and we're here to talk about books. For today's video, we're going to do the next in my Reviews Revisited series, where I pick a book that I reviewed sometime since 2005 and that I don't really remember very well, and then I reread it and do a deep dive analysis and then compare my thoughts in 2025 to what I thought originally. And for this month, we are looking at An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. But first of all, let's make some tea. So, what do the tea dice have in store today? 0 and 11. Oh, Rooibos, vanilla and choc. That sounds amazing. That's the Chocolate Cloud from T-shirt. It's an old favourite that I recently purchased for a friend for her birthday, and I decided I would get some for myself as well. Why indeed not? Good old past me has already boiled the kettle, so we are ready to go. Never used to like Rooibos, but when it is flavoured in an interesting way, I have grown to enjoy it. So, Rooibos, vanilla and chocolate. Yum! So, now that we've got our tea, always an important accompaniment to reading in my view, I'm going to have a think back to when I might have read this book before and what I might have thought of it. And I can't really remember. I do remember that there was quite a lot of hype about this book at the time, and then there was a very long gap between the first one and the sequel coming out. So long, in fact, that I completely forgot all about it until earlier this year when I discovered that the sequel had come out in 2023. And not only that, it's a duology, so the story is now complete. So I was quite keen because I'd remembered enjoying this book and being excited about reading on in the story, and I thought, yeah, good one to revisit because I don't really remember much about this book, but I am actually keen to finish the story, but I'd need to reread the first one. So I thought, yeah, Reviews Revisited, excellent. So yeah, it's got to be 5, 6, 7 years maybe since I read this. I'm not entirely sure. As far as I remember, there's some kind of contest between different factions of magicians. There's a female protagonist who's got her own agenda, but that's really about it. I have impressions in kind of emotional memory of it being quite exciting, and I do remember being very keen to find out what happened next in the story, so I think that it probably ends on a cliffhanger. But other than that, it's going to be like a new experience, as these videos often are. So I'm going to go and read the first half and then come back and give my thoughts on what my reading experience has been up to that point. So I will see you shortly. So, I am back after finishing the first half of An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard in less than 24 hours. So, not sure how much of an indication that is of how much I'm enjoying the book, but it's very readable and quite compelling and quite fast-paced. I was correct that it's about a contest between different houses of magicians. Yeah, and that was pretty much all I had remembered so far. Have to say, the first couple of chapters do an awful lot of heavy lifting in terms of introducing characters and the world building. So there's different houses of magicians, and they make up what's called the unseen world because they have very strong rules of secrecy. So they're not allowed to reveal the existence of magic to those that don't have it. And yes, there's a contest which is called once every generation or so. It's named The Turning. It's about the turning of Fortune's wheel. And the winner of the contest is the house that then rules the unseen world until the next contest. So it's a bit of a ridiculous kind of medieval knights and kings kind of situation, because each house names a champion. Which can be one of their actual members, a blood member of the family, or they can name someone from outside who then gets paid and will get advantages if they do really well. And then there are magical duels where they each cast a spell based on a particular theme, and then there's some kind of voting system of the other members to determine who's won and then who advances. So yeah, it's a bit stupid really in terms of governance, because it's a bit like medieval knights as champions for rulers, determining things through fights to the death. And yes, some of them are to the death. So yeah, that's the thing. It's quite a lot of characters, as I said, introduced. 5 or 6 in the first chapter, another 5 or 6 in the second chapter. And a lot of them have M names. There's Miranda, there's Madison, there's Miles, and House Merlin. I don't know what it is about authors in books I've read recently where they name characters with the same letter, and it's unnecessary because you can make the names whatever you want. And it does make it a bit confusing. But you've got Miranda, who's head of House Prospero, and Miles, who's head of House Merlin. So the two most powerful houses are Prospero and Merlin, which is not fantastically original. And Merlin is in power at the moment. And you have Gray, who is Miranda's son, but he's been disinherited from House Prospero. And you have Ian, who is Miles's son, but he's been disinherited from House Merlin. And there's also Sydney, who is introduced right at the start of the book doing a spell as an audition to apply to be a champion. And she is hired by Laurent, who is an outsider to the unseen world. So he's not a member of a house, and he's trying to gain the right to establish his own house by doing well in the competition. And then there's a young woman called Harper, who has made some kind of promise to someone unknown that she's going to gain access to the, I keep wanting to say the wizarding world, but it's not. It's the unseen world of magicians. Let's keep the terminology correct. And she has got some kind of revenge plot against a particular magician in the world. So yeah, there's an awful lot going on. There's a lot of background information about the competition and about how the world works and how the magicians govern themselves. It is a bit nebulous in a lot of ways. The magic system is very, very soft. It's all just hand gestures and incantations and drawing symbols on surfaces, and things then happen. They can draw on their own energy, or they can draw on energy from a pool of magic that's maintained, which is a big part of the story. And there's also a more global threat with hints of something going wrong with magic itself, which could threaten everybody. So that's extra stakes on top of the competition. So yeah, the rules of competition, the rules of the magic system, all a bit vague, all a bit confusing. A lot of different people, a lot of different factions, layers within the factions. Everybody's got their own agenda. Nobody is really a good guy. They're all quite morally grey, although some of them are very definitely worse than others. Motivations of some of the characters are a lot more honourable and justifiable than some of the others. And that's not necessarily clear right from the start, so there's quite a few surprises going on. But I actually found it a little bit difficult to follow in the first couple of chapters, because it's quite immersive. There's a lot of good description, a lot of good character detail. It's quite involving, but it is overwritten in places almost to the point of incomprehension. I mean, there were actual sentences where I had to go back and reread it to figure out what was going on. And with all of the really dense but not particularly explicit world building, I was finding it a little bit tricky, but I have got into it now at the halfway point. I have to say, not a huge amount has actually happened. There have been a few of the rounds of the competition. We've had a lot of background information, and we're getting more about the different characters' goals. But I think it's definitely going to ramp up in the second half. And I think that's probably oh no, there's quite a cute romance, which I'm definitely on board with, but that is indicative of one of the other problems I've got with the book, because there's not been enough space given to it, enough page time to really be able to get invested in it as a relationship. And I would say that that is true of a lot of things, because there's so many different factions and so many different characters, and it's not actually that long a book. I'm 175 pages in, which is halfway, and I don't feel as if really any more than maybe one or maybe two of the characters. So Sydney is given an awful lot of page time, but not really anybody else. Nobody else has really had enough space and time to get to know them properly and to get properly connected and invested in them. And there's a few that have only been in it maybe one or two scenes. And so it's a bit difficult to kind of like get the through line of their different subplots. But I suspect it'll all come together. And as I say, the tension and the action will probably ramp up quite a lot in the second half. But yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm maybe not as connected and invested as I'd want to be at this point in a book, but I read it for several hours yesterday perfectly happily, and I am quite keen to find out what happens. So now I'm going to go into a brief spoiler section. So if you don't want spoilers for the first half of An Unkindness of Magicians, skip to when the frame disappears. So yeah, I had completely forgotten that Gray, who is presented as a main character and a sympathetic character in the first chapter, is probably one of the worst bad guys, because he is going around killing young women and stealing their finger bones to fuel his own magic for a reason that's not become clear yet. And that kind of casts his mother, Miranda, who also seemed a reasonably sympathetic character to begin with, in not a great light, because that's why she disinherited him. But all she's done is disinherit him and remove him from membership of House Prospero. And she's just letting him wander around, rampaging around the city and killing innocent young female magicians to steal their finger bones. So that's not great. The reason that he's presented as a good guy character or someone to be invested in at the beginning is because he's best friends with Laurent, and Laurent definitely is a good guy. Well, I hope so. I mean, I think he's probably my favorite character at the moment. He seems pretty decent. He wants to get more equality and more diversity into the unseen world. So we've got to be on board with that, really. As I said, they're all pretty morally grey. The big kind of conflict within the world, at the center of it, is the House of Shadows, which is where this pool of common magic is developed. Every now and then each house has to provide one of their magicians to the House of Shadows, and they usually give away babies, I think, which is pretty horrifying. And they get taken into the House of Shadows, which is concealed behind spells in the reservoir at the middle of Central Park in New York. And those people are horribly tortured, and their magic gradually stripped away and put into this pool that the other magicians can tap into to supplement their own magic. And Sydney was brought up in the House of Shadows from a baby, and she's only just partially broken free. She's still contracted to the house, and she has an agenda that she wants to basically burn the unseen world to the ground and destroy the House of Shadows and the people that continue its practices. But she's also got tasks from the head of the House of Shadows, Shara, which we're not quite clear about yet. So she's got a lot of conflicting loyalties going on. Well, she's not loyal to the house, but she's obligated to continue serving the house for a while. Yeah, and I have to say, I'm not massively impressed with the magicians overall, because in this competition they do have duels to the death. Only the last one, I think the last round, has to be to the death, but they can challengers can make it to the death earlier on. But because of this problem with the magic, which sometimes strips magic unexpectedly from magicians or pours extra magic uncontrollably into them when they're casting spells, multiple people in the early rounds have died because their spells have gone awry. And nobody really seems that bothered. Just kind of like dropping dead. And yeah, nobody really seems to care that much. It's just like, oh, well, never mind. Bob's dead. Shame. Yeah, so yes, good and bad. I am intrigued. Do want to find out what's going to happen. So yeah, end of spoilers for the first half of An Unkindness of Magicians. Other things I've thought of, it's a bit grim in places, quite unpleasant, a bit graphic in some of the things that go awry. And in terms of diversity, which I like to look at when I'm doing a deep dive analysis of a book, it's largely about privilege and the abuses and advantages that come with wealth and power. Sydney represents the people who are exploited by those in power because of her background and where she's come from. And so that's kind of like class inequality and exploitation of disadvantaged people. And Laurent says that if he manages to get approved, he will be the first black man to be named as head of a house, and that he is the only non-white person involved in the whole competition. So there's obviously a lot of racial inequality in the unseen world as well. It is all a bit nebulous, as I said. At one point, Laurent has a conversation with Gray and says, well, what about what happens outside of New York, basically? And Gray says, oh, well, you know, there are other magicians elsewhere in the world, but we're here, so we have to play by the rules of what's happening here. So yeah, it's quite a microcosm of a world, really. And yeah, very nebulous in terms of the governing power, I guess, behind it, because Miles is head of House Merlin and he's in charge because he won the last turning competition, but he didn't call the new turning competition, which is happening about 10 years earlier than anybody expected it to. So we don't know who determines when this happens. So I don't know whether we're going to find that out at some point as well. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. Maybe not as much as I'd hoped, but it's well written. It's engaging. I'm hoping that the second half is going to get a bit more depth and a bit more pace to it. I guess I will go and carry on reading it and then come back and update you when I have finished the book. So I am back, and it is the same day. I've spent a fair few hours late morning and this afternoon finishing An Unkindness of Magicians by Cat Howard. And I will say, in the second half, it got 100 times more interesting, more action-packed, more emotive, more engaging. So yeah, everything that I wanted from the first half and wasn't quite getting, the second half definitely delivered. In fact, the first chapter that I read in the second half, suddenly much more layered, more complex plans being spoken about, and more involvement of one of my favourite characters that I don't know if I mentioned in the first half, Madison, who is a Prospero cousin but doesn't have enough magic to be a fully fledged magician. But she is a lawyer and she works for a firm that represents magicians in legal wranglings. So I really enjoyed her arc and her involvement, and I hope to see her again in the sequel. One of the things that really surprised me, because it's something that doesn't happen a lot in books, is that various of the characters, when they found things out or met various people or things progressed, instead of keeping all of their secrets to themselves and going it alone, actually banded together and went to the people they trusted and revealed all of the information they knew. And yeah, once the various women who were trying to take the system down got together, definitely ramped up in a really, really good way. I would say the ending feels a bit abrupt, maybe a bit too neat. I was expecting more of a cliffhanger because I remember being really keen to read the sequel, but this could be a standalone book. So I'm not quite sure what that's about. But yeah, the romance, I think, developed in an interesting way and was satisfying, which is quite rare for me in books. Yeah, good solid second half. I think everything else that I want to say is spoilers. So moving into the spoiler section, if you don't want spoilers for the second half of An Unkindness of Magicians, just skip to where the frame disappears. Yeah, Miranda didn't fare well in the second half either, because we find out that Sydney is actually her daughter and Gray's twin. And even though Miranda's husband told her that the second baby was stillborn and didn't reveal until much later that he took her to the House of Shadows as the house sacrifice, when she did find out, much like with Gray, when she found out that he was attacking and killing young women and she just disinherited him, she killed her husband, admittedly, but then didn't try and get Sydney out of the house. So Sydney is justifiably not keen to forge a relationship with her. Other than that, there were two battles that I was anticipating in the contest between Sydney and Ian, who were the ones who were in the romantic relationship, and also between Ian and his sister Lara, who had a really good relationship, and it was their dad who was the main bad guy. And they were both on the good side. And I saw them coming. I was like, how on earth is this going to work? Because once it gets to the bit where it's battles to the death, I mean, we don't want any of them to die. And the battles were arranged and they were circumvented in quite a clever way, but it did feel a bit anticlimactic that those things didn't happen. And as I said, the ending did feel a bit too neat in the way it was all wrapped up, and Lara got to take over House Merlin and House Prospero ended up in charge, and that was taken over by someone who was going to do good things in the world. I'd completely forgotten that Sydney lost all of her magic, and that seemed to be irrevocable. So really not quite sure what's going to happen in the sequel, because everything's been resolved and everything's going to get better, and maybe it's going to skip forwards to the next generation and the next turning, and we didn't find out what the power or force is that's turning Fortune's wheel and determining when the contests take place. So yeah, confused, but quite looking forward to getting into it. And I think that's probably about it really for spoilers. So end of spoilers for the second half of An Unkindness of Magicians. I forgot to mention that interestingly, the section that impacted me most emotionally was the viewpoint of one of the houses, because the houses seem to have some kind of sentience and some kind of personality and are able to communicate with their members. And there was a couple of sections, which was from the viewpoint of one of the houses, and that was definitely the most emotionally affecting, which is quite weird. So yeah, I'm definitely going to go and read the second one fairly soon, because I am intrigued as to where it's going. And I haven't actually done one of the most important bits. Looking at my previous review, I've got it up on my laptop, but almost forgot there to include it. So it turns out that I read it in January 2021, which, as with, I mean, it must be getting a bit boring now that it's way more recent than I expected. You really would have thought I'd remember this book better, but books apparently don't stick in my brain. Anyway, so this is what I said in January of 2021. An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard was recommended to me over a year ago, but I didn't get round to actually obtaining a copy until recently, and boy was I missing out. It's about a secretive world of magicians in New York who periodically have a competition, the Turning, where the different houses challenge each other to magical duels in order to establish a new societal hierarchy. Each house names a champion to fight their duels, which are to the death in the final round. However, the book is about a lot more than that, since the protagonist, Sydney, has deeper plans than just doing well in the competition. She comes from a place where children are tortured to drain their magic and make it available to other magicians, and she intends to upset more than just the leadership of the unseen world when she positions herself as a champion in the Turning. I found the book instantly involving, with a great range of characters, all of whom started out in shades of grey and gradually revealed themselves on one side or other of the conflict as the story went on. There were lots of layers to the book and a lot to unpack in terms of character motivations, deep background, magical morality, and personal vendettas. It's expertly woven together and had me staying up late to read more. I did find the point of view a bit muddled, shifting between characters within scenes. This used to be an entirely valid writing style, cf. George Eliot in Middlemarch, but it's not seen very often anymore, and I found it jarring. But other than that, the writing was beautiful, the characters engaging, the twists unexpected, and the ultimate conclusion very satisfying. It's a bit grim in places, but not nearly enough to put me off, and overall, I loved this book. Highly recommended if you like dark, complex, contemporary fantasy. Right. So yeah, no mention of having any knowledge that there might be a sequel at that point. Staying up late. I think I'm glad that that wasn't the case with this, because I had to stop yesterday at the halfway point because I had to do the filming before I carried on, and then today I've finished it during the day. But obviously it did grip me. I'm not sure I enjoyed it quite as much this time around as that review suggests. I certainly didn't find it instantly involving. It took until the second half to really grab me. But yeah, overall, pretty similar view. So I guess that's it for this month's episode of Reviews Revisited. Next month, because in actual fact also today I have just watched the last episode of the first season of Murderbot, which Dave and I have been very much enjoying, and I remembered that I had actually read at least the first book in the series. So next month I'm going to be listening to the audiobook of All Systems Red, and possibly a couple of the others because it's pretty short, by Martha Wells in the Murderbot Diaries series. So that's what's going to come up next month. So please join me for that. And in the meantime, I hope you're having a good reading month. And also enjoying some nice tea. Bye for now.